Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally welcome you to this constitutional special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. We know you have a choice when it comes to your radio listening pleasure, and would like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. What's more, we're confident that no other radio program or venue will fly you over the friendly airwaves in as much comfort and style, nor leave you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment quite like we can here at the Wright Flyer. Now that you're aboard, please be seated, fasten your seatbelt, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. We've taxied to the departure lane and are awaiting takeoff clearance from air traffic control. While they go through that mindless, bureaucratic red tape and regimentation, my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I, Randy Wright, shall delve into the pre-flight checklist because there is a lot of news and information to get to before we may indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Actually, tonight's show is going to be focusing on Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, and its prohibition against impermissible bills of attainder and ex post facto laws. Now, I'm sure many of you may be wondering why we would choose to start the first show of the new year on this topic. Well, I think that it relates very succinctly in with a lot of current events that have been happening, in particular the proposed gun-grabbing ban by Barack Hussein Obama. You know, the president actually said in his address over the weekend that a lot of gun owners have written to him, what he considers responsible gun owners have written to him, saying that they express a desire to uphold the Second Amendment, but also encroach upon the Second Amendment. And, of course, before we can really even get into that, which is dubious to say at best, it's important to explain, first of all, what an ex post facto law and bill of attainder are, and then how this ties in to the proposed gun-grabbing executive order. And what basically an ex post facto law is based off of the Latin root that we're hearing in that. Ex post facto, meaning after the fact. It means that after the fact it has changed something that was once legal into being illegal, or something that was once illegal into being legal, or it aggravates a punishment for a minor offense after the fact. Well, that's exactly what you're going to see with Barack Hussein Obama's proposed gun registration and regulation and all of that. Because what it's going to do, particularly with respect to small-scale gun merchants, is require them to get licensed after the fact. And therefore, they'd be punished for doing something that was previously previously legal and now has suddenly become illegal. And that is the point of fact of what our founding fathers thought was so illegal and so erroneous about the doctrine of ex post facto laws.
And the thing is, you can't. They want to take something that's perfectly legal. Okay. First of all, you go back to the letters about upholding the Second Amendment while encroaching on it. First of all, if you're upholding the Second Amendment, there's no possible way that you can encroach upon it. It's impossible. Completely impossible.
Jeremy, let's put out a challenge. Obama wants there to be more strenuous background checks. Put it on the table, President Obama. Give us the names and addresses of these so-called responsible gun owners. We need to do a background check. If you're going to background check us, it's only fair that we do a background check on them. I mean, all's fair, right?
Well, correct. And here's the other thing. When you want to require background check, we need to get something straight right now. All of this propaganda being perpetrated in the media about the loopholes at the gun shows, and there's no way to check for a person. Wrong. The only way that a person can actually legally purchase a firearm is if there is a NICS check done on them, a background check. It has to be done with a licensed firearms dealer. They're saying at the gun shows there's a loophole where, there's not licensed dealers and it's person-to-person sales. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what's known as intrastate commerce.
Ah, yes, but you know that that's where Obama's going to try and come in, once again kind of violating this whole notion of separations of power, and try and say that, well, no, we need to have background checks. In fact, he said it was for, I believe, anyone who sells more than 5 guns at a time, just 5 or more. That's just some arbitrary number that he picked out of the air, and it's totally violative of intra and interstate commerce, because, again, according to Article 1, Section 8, isn't it only Congress that can regulate interstate commerce? I'm fairly certain that's what our shared Constitution says.
Well, this whole thing is going to be Obama's Wickard v. Filburn is what it's going to happen. Now, here's the thing. More than 5 firearms at a time. Define what it means, the phrase at a time. Within an hour? Time frame, within 24 hours, within a year. That is so open-ended and broad that it would allow them to come in and say, well, you know what, you sold 5 firearms within the past 20 years. Guess what? You're in violation of the law.
Well, you know how Obama's going to put it out. You know how Obama's going to put it out. It's going to be the same way that he did with his health care law, his health care overhaul, which is another ex post facto law, and Bill of Attainder. And We'll explain what a Bill of Attainder is here in a minute. But so what he'll do is he'll put this out. He'll put his cards out on the table and have these vague, ambiguous terms that aren't well defined whatsoever. And then he'll sit there and he'll say, well, this is to be defined as the law goes into place. Well, first of all, an executive order is not law unless there is a specific enumeration by the Constitution or through the acts of Congress specifically delegating the president that power. With respect to the Second Amendment, there has been no such delegation of authority. So therefore, he is acting in a totally arbitrary and capricious way. The only purpose of an executive order is basically to help explain to officers the best way to expediently and efficiently run their agencies.
Correct, and it holds no authority outside of the executive branch. It, like you said, it's specifically delegated for those employees of that particular agency or within that branch of government. A lot of people want to think, well, it's an executive order, it's law. No, it's not. Laws can only be made by the legislative branch, and the last time I checked, the office of the presidency still resides solely under the executive branch, meaning executive to execute the laws, to carry them out.
It's funny. What it kind of... it raises a question with me here. If Obama wants to do all this lawmaking, why didn't he do it when he was in the legislature?
Sure. Or let's take it a step further. Why doesn't he just declare himself king like he wants to be and just go ahead and have his, ruling iPhone scepter, and, he can take his selfie stick and turn it into his little, royal scepter if he wants. Yeah, whatever the case is. But wait, he won't do that because, well, he doesn't have the guts to do it. I mean, he wants people to think that he's strong and he's weak. And I have to agree with what Ralph Peters said a few weeks back about him being, a total feline specimen.
Right. And that actually got Ralph Peters knocked off of Fox. Shame on Fox for being totally complicit in this type of nonsense of political correctness, which we've declared war on. Yeah, well, it's more than that. It's collaboration. But as I said a little bit earlier, that we would explain what a Bill of Attainder is. Now, a Bill of Attainder is a bill that specifically targets a particular individual or class of individuals just for them being part of that class of people or being identified as that person, and sets them up for punishment, often without a trial. So, let's take a look at Barack Obama's proposed executive orders on gun control, particularly this no-flight list, no-buy-guns list. That's putting somebody on that list without going through due process, which is absolutely required if you're going to deprive somebody of their fundamental and unalienable right. And therefore, any constitutional right, you have to have due process, because it is a fundamental and unalienable right, meaning endowed to us by our Creator, that no earthly authority can just willy-nilly take away from us. But that's not the case. It's just some secretive little nameless, faceless bureaucrat holed up in some room, tapping on keys after looking at pornography, putting your name on this no-fly list.
No, well, there's another problem that comes with this. Our first Air Marshal, Nelson Ward, brought to my attention, and brought to many people's attention today, that the driver's licenses, the state IDs and driver's licenses for the state of Missouri, are not considered by the federal government, I believe it was the Department of Homeland Security, to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Valid.
Valid. It's the same with Illinois.
Yes. Now, how can this work? First of all, the government doesn't have the authority, because the states have the supreme authority in issuing state IDs under the 10th Amendment. So the federal government is coming in and has told the state of Missouri, you basically no longer have the delegated authority that was given to you by the sovereign citizens of the state of Missouri to issue identification. Therefore, if the IDs are invalid, the state IDs are invalid, that means, guess what? You cannot even purchase a firearm. You cannot fly in an airplane, because you're automatically put on a no-fly list, because no valid ID means no flying. You're not going to be able to vote. Also, one of the big things is E-Verify. Many employers are going to E-Verify now. If you can't even adhere to the conditions of the E-Verify without having a valid ID, you're going to be, you can't even get a job. This is all set up for the main sole purpose of controlling the sovereign individual. If you don't have a job, no way of making your payments for your bills, what are people going to have to resort to? Relying on the government and going on the government teat. Now, this is a problem. This is just a way of controlling. But even furthermore, the most important thing about that is the people's rights being deprived and taken from them for being able to defend and maintain their constitutional rights.
And you know, that's always been the goal with Obama. Ever since he first assumed the reins of political power back in January of 2009, he has made that one of his sworn goals. You know, that's right up there with trying to close Gitmo. He's just going to do whatever he can to push that agenda, irrespective of the detrimental harm that it's going to have on the constituency or the electorate of the country, irrespective of any harm that it's going to have or any lasting impact that it's going to have on the nation as a whole. And it goes to show that he's twisted and radical and very much so an extremist in his approach to this stuff. And you have to ask yourself, what is it about the ability of the American people to care for themselves that he loathes and despises so much? We are endowed by our Creator with the fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms because, it was designed to protect us from a tyrannical and overbearing, overreaching government. And that's exactly kind of what we're seeing with Obama. Hell, it's more than just kind of. It's exactly what we are seeing with this federal government. And because these no-flight lists are specifically naming someone, that is a direct violation of the Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, prohibition against both ex post facto and bills of attainder. So this is basically both a bill of attainder and an ex post facto law. And if you go back to the very old case of Caldwell v. Bull from 1798, it was Justice Samuel Chase held that, this prohibition against ex post facto laws and bills of attainders were applied both to the national legislature and the legislatures of the several states to prevent violence and injustice. So you see, our founding fathers actually considered what Obama is trying to do right here and right now as a gross injustice and as perpetrating violence against the people. And yet, he's going to sit there and in this dubious fashion claim that, well, I'm doing this to save the people. Save the people. Keep them safe. Save the children.
And the children. And
yeah.
he speaks more about the children. Now, where have we seen in history where somebody has utilized the circumstance of talking about saving the children,
Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong,
you name it,
Ho
they've
Chi
done
Minh,
it.
Yeah,
and it's all the same socialist propaganda that is being utilized over and over and over. Now I want to point something else out here, Randy.
Okay.
With the issue with the state of Missouri and their licenses being invalid. Like I said, it eliminates. It basically makes them, the citizens of the state of Missouri,
serfs,
illegal citizens, non-citizens. Now, at the same time, enter in illegal aliens. It's taking the citizenship away from the United States citizens, which is a birthright for us, and giving it to individuals who are not citizens, just giving it to them. They're not applying for it. They're not earning it. They're certainly not born here. It's opening up a door and a big Pandora's box where anybody and everybody and their brother and sister and their Uncle Muhammad can come into our country. And
think about it. Think about it. You've got a criminal political class, a criminal political elite, making things easier for criminals.
Sure.
It's these backroom deals. And, it was Alexander de Tocqueville that actually said something, and I was surprised because I hadn't read this in a long time. You know how I call the utopian socialists basically neo-feudalists? Mm-hmm. That's what de Tocqueville called them. He said that that's exactly what they're trying to do. That they try and take away from the people to control them and micromanage them so much that they have no freedom whatsoever. So it ties them to the utopian socialist ideology. And so if you actually look back at the way things were in the USSR, you couldn't just move around. You had to get permission to do so.
Sure, and if you tried without permission, there was checkpoints. There was ways of registering people. I mean, they had implemented a census-like registry for the citizens, and I know that to be a fact because I actually had relatives, ancestors, back in 1915 that were on a registry list, and they were actually deported out of Poland, Russia. So, and their farms and their properties were taken for the purposes of Russia and the Russian government. So they established a registry, and the thing with the illegal aliens,
the Burisky of Landmanjinsky,
sure, something to that effect. And the thing with this illegal aliens issue is not only is it ex post facto, but it's all for that issue, but it's also ex post facto for the citizenship of the United States citizens, of their citizenship essentially being stripped away from them. So it's like a double whammy.
Well, it's a triple whammy when you also consider that it goes against the privileges and immunities of the
absolutely.
citizens.
Well, we can make it fourfold, because not only that on the national level, but also at the state level as well under the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the whole again, they're doing these things because of the verbiage that they're using, the political correctness speak that is rolling off of their Ubangi lips and littering the floor for people to slip on, but nobody's being aware of the surroundings. So everybody is slipping on this, and they're not watching where they're walking, they're not paying attention to their surroundings, and this stuff is being done because people have become complacent.
Well, they've been lulled to sleep by a very propagandistic style education system in this country. I mean, if you go back to Thomas Dewey, the man who basically organized our modern public education system here in the United States, going all the way back to the 30s, he was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, the American Communist Party. He was big in that. He supported Eugene V. Debs, and then when Debs couldn't go anywhere, he supported the one that was their closet member, who was FDR. So when you look at all of that, and the history of it, and you realize that that's been going on for 70, 80 years, is it any wonder then that people have become complacent because, you know, the government has just been working mother and father into the ground now, and it's just so hard to sustain yourself, to have mere sustainability due to all of these overzealous and draconian governmental regulations, that people can't just focus on the kids. And that's where that infamous euphemism from Madam Clinton is, it takes a village to raise a child. That's where that comes in. The whole idea is to take it away from the individual. They loathe and despise the individual. And this hatred, it runs so deep and it is so visceral that they claim that they even want to politicize logic. That's what the Fabian socialists set themselves up to do. And then you mirror that type of logic with what we see with this hoax of global warming, or the way that they keep trying to say that the gun violence issue is a public health issue. See, that's tying it in just like the Nazis did.
Absolutely. And again, we have to look back at history. You know, speaking of ex post facto laws and bills of attainder, Adolf Hitler was supreme at this. He worked it over and over, and he did it in such a timely fashion. But he had, it was a different time. The countries were different, you know, socioeconomically, so on and so forth. The way he did this, and again, I draw the comparison. This is why I call him Adolf Obama, because the very first thing that he wanted to do when he took office, the very first thing and legislation he wanted to implement was the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. That's the first thing that Hitler did with the Prevention of Progeny and Diseases Act in Nazi Germany.
And that's how they got the back door into gun control.
That's how they got the back door into gun control. And now, if everybody's paying attention, Obamacare has been ramped up. They've more than doubled the fines now for the penalty for not having health care, which I'm going to have fun with, by the way. I'm going to have lots of fun. But the thing is, it all runs congruent with the timing of the gun control things. We look at this issue that's going on with the Bureau of Land Manipulation out in Oregon right now. Okay? That has been going on for over 100 years. Over 100 years. It began with the Shoshone tribe. It dealt with the Bundy Ranch in Nevada. It spilled over into Oregon. And it's always been, it's been an ongoing battle. Not much has been said about it. But lo and behold, the very same week that he is about to make this announcement and meet with the Attorney General Loretta Lynch on how to phrase this to where and make sure that it's constitutionally sound for him to have an executive action. He's not even calling it an executive order now. It's an executive action because he wants to use the play on words.
You want to know what the difference is? Actually, there is a difference between an executive order and action. An executive order actually has to be signed by the president. An executive action does not.
Correct. Now, that's why he's labeling it this, and he's wanting to expedite this. But here's the thing. I find the timing with all of this very peculiar. This whole thing is now erupting in Oregon at that wildlife reserve. Right now at the time that he's set to pounce on making this announcement about executive action for gun control.
And then have you seen how the Black Lives Matters crowd has come out and tried to tie race into this. It's all trying to tie it into this type of thing to create tension, But for what? To declare martial law and suspend the election? Well, I wouldn't put it past him the way that he came out and said, well, I'd be perfect for a third term.
Right. And again, I don't think, to be a fly on the wall in that office where he was having a meeting with Loretta Lynch, one could only surmise that particular meeting wasn't strictly about this executive action he wants to take. I'm willing to bet that him and Miss Lynch probably spoke about this situation going on out there in Oregon, and
I certainly wouldn't put it past them.
We only have to look at history, and even just recent history within the past, 20, 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
Where we had the incident with the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas.
Actually, I'm going to correct you there. Elk, Texas. Waconians are a bit touchy about that. Actually, as a personal anecdote, the high school and junior high school that I went to was actually the original Branch Davidian compound, the one from the 20s. And it was funny because you could see on the old building, it's since been renovated, so you can't see it anymore, but they had gun towers up on the top of it, and they had just boarded those up.
Well, and I guess that's where people make the correlation. Yeah. And again, we could probably blame the media for that, because they probably looked, the Branch Davidians originated there, and so we'll just call them. The point is, we know how that played out with the Branch Davidians. Okay, it's been proven. There's actual, law enforcement departments that utilize the video footage from that as training purposes of how not to serve a warrant. Okay, as a training video. Okay,
and, Sheriff Harwell had that whole situation under control.
Absolutely.
He's now late. He's passed away. But he said that, look, guys, Koresh goes to Jack and Jill Donuts every morning.
Every single morning.
At 6 for his glazed donut and coffee. Now, unfortunately, that old Jack and Jill's is a Dollar General store now, but at the time, it was a Jack and Jill Donuts.
And, my correlation with this is that situation escalated at the hands of the federal government.
Oh, of course.
I'm just wondering, with this little meeting, and again, this is, speculation, but again, history is a great teacher. It always repeats itself because people are, doomed to repeat it because they don't pay attention to it. The situation in Oregon, I wonder how much anybody would want to bet that they had something to say about it. Well, we're going to wait and hold off as long as we can to see how this situation escalates, and if it escalates in our favor to where we can use it to trump up this executive action of going and grabbing people's guns, because they're going to look at this, the individuals involved there that are making a stand, which I'm not in total agreement with the way that they're doing it. It could have been strategized a bit better than what they did. However, I can understand that because of the lengthy nature of this, for a century, this stuff has been going on with these ranchers and the federal government feuding like this. I can understand that, at what point in time do people say, okay, enough is enough, we're going to stand our ground? I get that.
Certainly when you look at the way that this federal government's been, because over the past 7 years of the Obama administration, we have seen flagrant abuse after flagrant abuse of our federal legal system, where he's just ignoring it at every given opportunity. When you have that, you have a rogue and tyrannical government that really should not be acting in this country at all because it goes against everything that's contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution. But we see that, yes, they're now taking this stand in this empty building, and maybe that's a mistake, maybe not. Maybe they want to be a sacrifice. I wouldn't want to be, but maybe they're seeing this as the Alamo, because they certainly say that they've got trailers full of ammunition, supply, and foodstuffs to last for as long as it takes, and they're willing to take however long it takes.
Sure, and I can understand that, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that I would agree that it is to the level of the Alamo. The Alamo was the battle that, to basically prevent the advancement of the Mexican army, kind of to delay their advancement. The thing with the BLM, they've already advanced and encroached on these ranchers' properties. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to make a stand, this is how I would have done it. To me, this is a little bit more rational. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, but there's a couple of other venues that they could have done this. They could have been right there at the ranch itself, or publicly protesting in front of the court building where this whole fiasco took place.
Well, that's actually where their protest started. They started at the courthouse, marched to the land, then took the building. And the reason they actually took the building is to really get the feds' attention, because the feds would have just laughed it off, because the courthouse was county. There was no federal courthouse in that area. So the only federal land, other than, just flat nothingness, is that wildlife reserve. And what's interesting is that reserve was first created by none other than Theodore Roosevelt. So this has that long inkling back to the roots of progressivism, right? Progressivism, and that is the message they're trying to hammer home. Problem is, a lot of people aren't going to be able to make that connection because a lot of people just don't know their history.
Sure, and a lot of people I don't think are going to be willing to make that connection or to make that trip out there in support of them, because I don't think the American people, and again, this is why we do these shows, they're not awake enough to understand the gravity of these situations of what's going on. Many of them say, oh yeah, I support them. They'll sit on social media, I support them, yeah, give them hell, so on and so forth, but yet they'll do it from the comfort of their own home where they're safe and secure and they don't have to worry about someone, taking a tank retrieval unit and busting it through their window and letting off a bunch of gas and burning their house down. So it's I understand why they're doing it. I completely respect and support their intentions and the ideology behind it. But I just think it could have been done better, because the issue is this: if they're surrounded by the feds on federal land, and if they're banking on American citizens to come to their aid, and that doesn't happen, they're putting all of their eggs in one basket, banking on that. The feds surround them, and the American people do not come to their aid and help them.
Then it's the Alamo. But the outcome of that is, remember what happened in the immediate aftermath of the Alamo. It galvanized the young Texians into saying, hey, wait a minute. If I was sitting on the fence post before, I'm not doing it now. And they went down to San Jacinto, and they captured El Presidente Santana, Antonio Lopez de Santana, during his little siesta in an 18-minute battle. They ended that entire war. That is the type of galvanization I think you will see here, because I do sense the anger. And then again, I also have to point back to that whole piece that Pat Caddell put out, a couple of weeks ago, saying that 3/4 of the American people are already feeling that the government is ruling without their consent, and that we are closer to revolution than ever before. So we are in the proverbial powder keg. And so,
Sure.
yes, it was a mistake probably to do it the way they did. They said the same thing about the Alamo. If they don't get the support there, well, it will at least galvanize the people together. At least, if history is any indicator, that's how it would be.
Sure, and that would be the hopes of it. Now, again, I'm of the mindset that yes, what our government is doing to us in encroaching upon our rights, trying to deprive them, absolutely every red-blooded, patriotic American citizen that is a sovereign individual should be yelling at the top of their lungs, no. Again, we go back to the single word that is known and understood throughout every language within the entire world, no. And there's just not enough people standing up and saying that yet. Could that happen with the galvanizing of this, if it plays out that way? It could. But the thing is...
Most likely would.
It most likely would, but there's still that chance that it won't.
Yeah, but you always have that. There was
Sure.
always the chance at Lexington that they wouldn't go to Concord, or vice versa. You can't just not do it because of a risk that it wouldn't happen.
Sure. Well, and again, the whole thing is, risk reward, and I completely understand that concept. There's always the risk. The risk is never going to change. If you resist any kind of authority figure whatsoever, there's going to be consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that if there's going to be consequences, if it comes down to that, and folks, we're not calling for an armed revolution in any way, shape, or form. We're not speaking by no means. We're just speaking historically with facts that these things have happened. History has a tendency to repeat itself. If it should come down to that, I would want something to be more solidified with that reward. I want the people to understand that the reward has to outweigh the risk. And at this point, I understand why they're doing this. I just think that the way they went about it, the risk is outweighing the reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least the way that it's currently standing. But
sure.
There's already been reports of the FBI sending full armed people out there. Like you said, mm-hmm. There's already reports of a surrounding maneuver. And then I've heard of some militia group called Oath Keepers saying that they're shipping extra people out there. So who knows what is developing? Again, it seems a piss-poor place to pick as a place to take your stand, but then again, so was that dilapidated mission in San Antonio de Bejar back in the Texas Revolution. And what we have to keep in mind here is that all of this is brewing over because of things like Obama's planned executive gun orders to basically be an ex post facto law or a bill of attainder. And I know that the cynical left-winger would probably pop up out of his gopher hole, stealing it from the gopher, and say, but Article 1, Section 9, that speaks to the legislature. Obama's acting as an executive. Well, that just goes to show it's twofold, the problem that we're facing here with Obama. First of all, as per Article 2, he's not given any legislative authority. He should not be doing any legislation. And secondly, ex post facto can apply beyond Congress doing it. The prohibition was specific to Congress, but it can apply to all branches equally.
And see, here's the thing. It is twofold, but I think it's actually threefold, because even if you're looking at Congress knows he's planning on doing this, and yet we have individuals in Congress that are kowtowing to him, and then we have individuals in Congress that are not saying a damn word.
Paul Ryan again.
And my issue is, people want to say, well, it's not being addressed the way it's supposed to be addressed, so, he has to do something. No, it is not in his authority to do anything regarding this. It falls squarely on the shoulders of Congress, House of Representatives, and the Senate. And if they are ignoring issues, first of all, they're doing a disservice to the American people by allowing any discussion whatsoever that is going to curtail or infringe upon our constitutional rights, no matter which one it is.
Right. And see, that's the problem that we've had for over these past 7 years. It's as though they are absolutely afraid to stand up against Obama in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And it's, again, all due to that poisonous doctrine of political correctness. They are afraid of being labeled as a bunch of racists. But you know what? It's time to grow a pair. It's time to stop worrying about it. Because guess what? If you don't act, if you don't stand on principles and convictions right now, this country will die.
And here's the other thing. Stop worrying about being called a racist. Whether you stand up and do something or you sit quietly in the shadows and say nothing, you're still going to be called a racist.
And you know what? The very fact that these Black Lives Matters groups, all of these little weasels that we've seen come out of the woodwork throughout this whole summer, sitting there saying that, this use of militia, that's just proof of white privilege, all of this, that just shows how desperate they really are. It shows that the veneer is wearing off, that the people are sick and tired of it, that this cancerous doctrine of political correctness has been exposed. It was just pushed to too far of an extreme during 2015, and the people have absolutely had it.
Yeah, and all these protesters, these overpaid, unskilled laborers, that's what they are. That's all they are. They have no higher education. They have no workable skills whatsoever, other than being able to run off at the mouth and break stuff, cause destruction. And the thing is, they're destroying their own stuff. But yet, they want to
That's
sit
always
here.
The way it is with these utopian
Absolutely.
Socialists.
That's
always
the way
how they are.
That's the first cardinal rule of being an overpaid, unskilled laborer. That's what it is. And they want to sit here and they want to point the finger at individuals who are exercising their God-given rights and standing up for their rights, maintaining their rights. See, folks, that's called projection.
Pot, pot, kettle, black, the whole thing.
Sure. And there's really no difference between them and the individuals like Gorgie Schwartz, a.k.a. George Soros, who would run around the countryside over in Eastern Europe saying, "Oh, I found the Jew, I found the Jew. Kill him so I can take his gold teeth and amass a bunch of wealth." Because you have to remember, he did the same things. He created situations, or was put into situations where he caused harm and havoc and terror for individuals, and then turned around and labeled other individuals for doing the same thing that he did, but yet all those people were doing was simply trying to save their own lives.
Yeah. Well, he's a scumbag. He's a scumbag.
Sure.
And that's what
Black
all
Lives
of these
Matter
people
falls
are.
right into the same
He's funding
wet bag.
it. He's funding
Absolutely
it.
is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, the twisted and conceited and duplicitous nature of the left is on full display. They want to sit there and hide behind these labels that they've created for themselves. Oh, well, I'm a progressive. No, you're not a progressive. You're a communist. That's all you are. That's all you ever were. That's all you'll ever be. Until you die and you become worth something as fertilizer. Until then, you are worthless.
Sure. Rectal apertures.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't even give
they
them that credit. That's too lofty for them. But, you look at what Obama's trying to do with Loretta E. Lynch. He sits there and he says, well, Congress has had so much time to act and they haven't acted. Well, no. Congress went to the various groups, the various caucuses, the various subcommittees and committees, and reviewed it, and reviewed everything that he was talking about. They came to two conclusions. One, that these things wouldn't do anything, and that two, they were violative of the Constitution, and therefore they didn't pass them.
Sure. Now, I have a question. If his sole purpose, as the media reports, is to go to individuals like the Attorney General to make sure that it's constitutionally sound and perfectly legal for him to do this, I thought he was a constitutional scholar and attorney.
Well, I am. Jeremy, I worked at Chicago. I picked my nose. I sat back on my desk, and I knew the Constitution. I knew the Constitution was something written by white imperialists, as Frank Marshall Davis Jr. taught me.
And see, again, this is the propaganda that we're talking about. People are, he's putting himself out there to give the perception to the American people that, well, I want to make sure, that's why I'm calling in all these other people, and I'm asking them just so that I make sure, so I don't make a mistake. Even thinking this thought in your head and wanting to implement something like this is the mistake that has been made. It doesn't matter what you talk about. It doesn't matter how you do this or that. When you think about doing this and depriving and stripping the American citizenry, the sovereign citizen, of their unalienable constitutional rights, that's a mistake. And it's a mistake that
it's more than just a mistake. It's a direct and deliberate assault on the sovereignty of the people. And,
Absolutely.
he came out again and he said, well, 70% of gun owners support me. Really? Really? Put out their names. Let's do a background check.
Sure.
Since you want to be all about background checks, I need to have a background check on that. And while we're at it, open up your school records. We need to do a background check on you to make sure, to verify that you aren't a danger to the Constitution or the country. Oh wait, turnabout's fair play, Mr. President.
Yeah, I'd like to see copies of that Fulbright scholarship there, Mr. President. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and release those documents, unseal those records?
They should have never been sealed in the first place.
Correct. And my guess is you won't.
Of course
Because
not.
it will undo everything that you've tried to tout yourself up as.
And while we're at it, why don't we ask Miss Squatch, little Moochie there, to release the bar disciplinary records as to why she voluntarily gave up her bar license. And the same goes for you, Mr. President. Why don't you explain why you voluntarily surrendered your law license? As a licensed attorney, I find it very hard to believe that somebody would just willfully give up something that was so hard to earn.
Well, again, you put emphasis on earn as if he actually earned it to begin with.
I know he didn't. That's just the weight that I put on to if we're going to play the same credibility game that he's trying to play.
Well, let's play it. Let's go full tilt.
Yeah.
There it is.
70% of dead people don't want to vote Democrat again. Thanks. Please stop waking them up.
Yeah. Oh. And again, this is why we do these shows. Mm-hmm. People need to be reminded, and if they never knew before, there's no better time than now to educate yourselves. Don't just listen to what we have to say. Don't just take it for set in stone and verbatim and face value. Research it. My guess is that you research what we have to say, what we're bringing to you, and you latch onto it and you delve into it, and you will develop an understanding, and you will see that the time you put into researching it is well worth the weight in gold that you exuded on it.
And what's interesting is that President Obama was also meeting with Gabby Giffords over the weekend. Little Gabby.
Gabby Giffords, the one that likes to shoot AR-15s at targets of children holding, toy firearms at the gun range? That Gabby Giffords?
I think, yeah, that was before she lost a little bit of her cognitive ability, but yeah. I felt sorry for the bullet because it was basically starved.
Yeah. The same Gabby Giffords that was married to some rocket...
Astronaut!
Yeah, that actually purchased firearms illegally and lied on the ATF form. Was it 4478 or 4470? I can't remember the designation of the form, but
I think it was the 78.
Yeah, 4478. Yeah, and actually purchased firearms for other individuals on their behalf. Oops, that same Gabby Giffords and astronaut.
Yeah, the astronaut. Mike Kelly, I believe his name was.
I believe that's what it is.
Yeah. So, if he's meeting with all of these people to see how it's lawful, why the hell is he meeting with Gabby Giffords? Other than to make a pity play, to work up the sympathy of the people she got shot and it did make her dumber than she already was.
We have to do this for the children.
Yeah, we got to do this for the children, even the adult children like Gabby Giffords. I mean, come on, this is pathetic pandering at its worst. And I'm very sorry that Gabby Giffords got shot, but I am very sick of her politicizing this time and again.
Well, this is what socialists do. Time in, time out, and it's the whole point of the mindset of the American people, the sovereign individual, has to change. It must change. If it doesn't change, if people are going to continue to sit back and remain silent, if they believe that they're people of good conscience, just like our, Congress. Again, we have people that are kowtowing to this crap, and then we have people that aren't kowtowing to it, but they're not saying anything.
Right.
But isn't it presumable that when someone is elected to an office of public trust of that level, that they are, in fact, an individual of good conscience, because they do all take the same oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution. And in order to be able to do that in a cognitive way, you have to have somewhat of a good conscience. But remember what Thomas Jefferson said. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent.
And of course, that's the problem that we're running into right now, is that people are afraid to act. They are afraid to do anything because why? The government has become so all-encompassing and all-powerful that it can sit there and dictate how you live, what you can do, what you can't do, what is right and what is wrong. I mean, they literally micromanage every facet of our day-to-day lives. And that's, folks, it's not about keeping people safe. And it's not about saving the children. All this is about is concentrating more power illicitly at the expense of the ultimate wielders of sovereignty of this country, we the people, into the hands of a few, into the hands of the utopian socialists. This is why Alex de Tocqueville said, hey, you see this little thing about socialists? They're really feudalists. And they really are. And communism takes it to that next extreme.
Mm-hmm. And again, it falls squarely back on this whole thing of political correctness. And they want to use political correctness as a double-edged sword. They want to make examples out of people that say, wait a minute, this isn't right. You're not supposed to be doing this. You don't have the authority to do this. You work for me. And when people step up to that level, what happens to them? The government comes by, puts their thumb on them, and makes an example out of them, and instills fear. And the rest of the people say, if you speak out again, this is what's going to happen to you, or worse. We've seen the targeting of conservative, non-profit organizations by the IRS. Why? Because their intentions of those non-profit organizations is to, protect freedoms or bring awareness to our freedoms being stripped away from us. or
No.
work on projects dealing with veterans, military veterans who took an oath and put their lives on the line, basically paid the ultimate sacrifice or were willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice so that we had the ability to enjoy our rights and exercise them. But no, they're targeted because of what their intentions were, and they were made an example out of. Well, guess what, folks? It's time to take the shoe off and put it on the other foot. We need to start making examples of these individuals. We need to bring it to the forefront. We need to expose them for exactly what they are, and keep hammering on them until they break. Because everybody is breakable.
And because if we don't, they will break our shared constitution. They will break our fundamental and unalienable rights. You know, the old adage goes that liberty is a fickle woman, a fickle lover. And the reason that she is because you have to be proactive to keep something of such a wild spirit alive. And the powers of despotism and tyranny are really not weak. They are strong. Evil is a powerful sentiment and emotion and driving force. Just look at all of the evil and twisted government people that have ever existed. Mao, Ho Chi Minh, Stalin, Pol Pot, Khrushchev, all of them. All of these communists, all of these despots from years past, they all share in common this evil desire to strip people of their natural state of being, which is to be free, sovereign, individual sovereignty.
You know why? Because they know that individual sovereignty that is exhibited at the highest degree prevents them from doing anything that would destroy individualism. They fear that. And see, what they're doing with all these tactics, it's nothing but fear tactics is all it is. Again, it's a double-edged sword. Do as I say, not as I do. We're going to use political correctness to do this, 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 and this, but if you speak out against this, this, and this, we're going to turn the sword the other way and slash it back, the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's always about control.
Correct. And we, the people, need to understand how they're doing this. We already know why they're doing this. We've established that. It's about control. We need to know now how they're doing this. And again, we can point to history. We can point to documents in history that have exhibited this same tactics over and over and over. You can look at Mein Kampf, you can look at the Nazi Party platform, the Communist Manifesto, you can look at Joseph Goebbels' Principles of Propaganda. Every single one of those documents, and there's this whole slew of other documents that throughout the history of the world has been utilized for the detrimental purposes of destroying the individual and their sovereignty. Here's an idea, and see if folks would agree with me on this. Why don't we use those same tactics and turn the tables on them? Let's fight fire with fire. They want to use propaganda to label people as homegrown domestic terrorists. Let's use that exact same propaganda, the same verbiage.
And we'll start by labeling Black Lives Matters as terrorists. You know,
Absolutely.
It's their black privilege.
Absolutely.
It's their black privilege. I mean, look at the black privilege that Eric Holder was allowed to get away with. Wasn't he a part of a little terrorist group back when he was in college?
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Now, did that prevent him from becoming the Attorney General? No, it didn't. Would it have prevented you or me from ever holding that position? Absolutely.
Yes.
You see,
and
there it
again,
is, folks. That is the double standard. And yet they have the gall to go out there and say, it's us who's being discriminated against. You know what? Shut up. No, you're not. Sit down, shut up. We're tired of you getting away with your crimes.
And until individuals start enforcing the law completely, equally, across the board, instead of cherry picking. Again, we're going back to the Bill of Attainder, because every time there's a Black Lives Movement incident, like, showing up at a mall and disrupting the flow of commerce.
Oh,
and
by the way, there's one in Portland, Oregon.
Intimidating individuals' right to peaceably gather or to travel, to engage in commerce, to move freely about the country. Every single time an incident like that happens, drop the hammer on them. Execute the law to the fullest extent on them. Instead of being afraid of being labeled something that they're going to label you anyways, regardless of how you act. You're going to be called a racist. You're going to be called a hater. You're going to be called a person, well, you're just not nice. And, it's a hate crime to punish us. I'm sick of it.
It's not a hate crime. There's no hate crime there. Look.
All crime is hate.
Yes. And to say that there is a different kind of treatment for certain thought, certain mens rea, that's a bunch of ridiculous bull crap. And the reason that I say that is we have something known as equal protection under the law,
which works hand in hand with Bill of Attainder
and the
preventions of
law. Yep.
And ex post facto law. It's the equal protection under the law. The equal protection clause is the safeguard of Bill of Attainders and ex post facto's laws being passed. Mm-hmm. Because equal protection of the law, if you don't prosecute individuals like the Black Lives Matter movement or CARE or the ACLU, how about the LGBT? NAMBLA.
STFU.
STFU.
Yeah, LGBT STFU. We're updating the categories.
Yes, just throw some more alphabet soup in there. But here's the thing. If you do not prosecute them when they commit crimes, these, again, overpaid, unskilled workers going into Ferguson or Baltimore, New York City, wreaking havoc, causing chaos, if you fail and neglect to prosecute them, you are essentially implementing a Bill of Attainder. Because what you are doing at that point, when an individual stands up and protects themselves against those thugs, those little wannabe potentates, and you punish them for defending themselves, but you don't want to punish the ones that are committing the criminal acts, now you've actually instituted a Bill of Attainder because you have ascertainly named a specific individual or a group of persons that you are going after.
Right.
Period.
And you see, I think it's so laughable that we see a bunch of these people in the media sit there and say, well, look at the double standard in reporting, when these white vigilantes with guns take over a federal building, it's protesters, but if it's Black Lives Matters, they get gunned down. No, I haven't heard about the Black Lives Matters people getting gunned down in Portland, Oregon. I have heard about the FBI coming in and surrounding the ranchers who are tired of their land being stolen from them and are tired of the Bureau of Land Manipulation and Land Malarkey from cutting their land up impermissibly. I mean, I thought the whole part of the thing was you couldn't take somebody's land without giving just compensation for it. Well, we sure as hell haven't seen that.
Well, let's look at the other situation with the Bureau of Land Manipulation.
And malarkey.
Now, see, here's the thing. These ranchers, the Hammond family and the Bundy family, specifically the Hammond family, were given permission to do a controlled burn on their property to create more fertile land for their cattle to graze on.
And you know what's interesting? The older Hammond, the 73-year-old father, had served a month, and his son had served a year. And the reason that the federal judge in that case had originally said that was he said that it didn't meet the mens rea for these terrorism charges that they put there, and that it would be cruel and unusual punishment, a violation of the Eighth Amendment, to have them go in for 5 years. Now we have another judge, after the fact, ex post facto, come in and say, they didn't do it long enough. They got to go back. Do 5 years minimum.
Well, wait a second. They were already prosecuted, sentenced, carried out their sentence, did their time, and now they have to go back and do more. Yeah, guess what? That's double jeopardy, folks.
Yes, it is.
That is double jeopardy.
Illegal. Totally illegal. It makes a mockery of our criminal justice system, and it makes me, an officer of the court, livid that they would do anything like that and just make a joke of our criminal justice system. How despicable.
But wait, there's more. It's okay for these ranchers to be prosecuted, not once but twice, and succumb to double jeopardy, but when the Bureau of Land Manipulation and Land Malarkey do their own controlled burns on property that the government is overseeing, and those fires get away and burn a little bit of the rancher's land to destroy the rancher's land.
Sovereign immunity.
They're not compensated for it. Sovereign immunity. So they're immune from prosecution for doing the exact same thing that these ranchers are accused
being
of
called
doing.
terrorists for.
And being called terrorists. Who's the terrorist here, folks? Let's think about this for a second. First of all, I'm going to Bureau of Land Manipulation and Land Malarkey. You have no constitutional authority to exist. None.
Yep.
Zero. So why are you even in the picture? Oh, are you going to come after me and take my land now?
Theodore Roosevelt was a progressive, and he wanted to save the bull moose so he could have the bull moose muskrat communist party.
So what are they going to do now, Randy? Are they going to come and take our land, our property? I'll tell you what.
Time.
Well, Milan LeVay, how's that?
Yeah.
You want it? Come and get it.
Yeah.
Because
in
guess
fact,
what?
That's what
you want to come and take my property. You want to come and take my property. I live in the city. You want to come and take my property? Guess what? I'm not going to find federal land to make a stand. I will stand to defend my own home. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Hey, and as for Obama, with these executive orders, that are both an ex post facto law and a bill of attainder, Greg Abbott, the governor of my home state of Texas, held up the Gonzales flag, from the opening
the cannon.
From the opening shots of the Texas Revolution, which was back in October of 1835, and it has a cannon with a star above it, and under it it says, "Come and take it." That's a challenge. That's a direct challenge to these unconstitutional acts by this rogue and tyrannical president that has been obfuscating the truth, has been trampling upon the Constitution at any and every given opportunity, and is willfully and intentionally and purposefully trying to deprive us of our fundamental and unalienable rights with groups like the Bureau of Land Manipulation and Malarkey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why? When was a government ever allowed to own land other than D.C.?
Well, again, we have to point back to Teddy Roosevelt.
And folks, don't kid yourself. Teddy was a Republican. So there are Republican progressives. That disastrous, ugly strain started in the gutless opposition party.
Now, Randy, if we continue to call, this commander in communism a tyrant and acting in a tyrannical way, he might just pull a Lincoln on us.
Oh, send me down south. I could live with.
Well, if he does, I'll be joining you.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point? And see, folks are going to listen to this, and they're going to come out of the woodwork and scream, "These guys are
racist
extremists, and they're racist, and they're speaking ill about the government, and this and that." So, I'm glad, because you know what? This is my constitutional right. This is all of our constitutional right to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Folks, all we're doing is holding up a mirror to the government so that
Sure.
the government can see itself and just how ugly it's become. Because
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the socialist of all?
that's a hard one to answer.
Well, the mirror actually it's one of those, like, Art Deco mirrors. It's got, like, you know,
Oh, a
100
carnival
different
mirror?
little mirrors, all, yeah. So, actually, you know what it is? What it is, Randy, is we actually just took a ball-peen hammer, smacked the mirror, and it's just cracked it and shattered into a million pieces, and we're just holding it right up to them and saying, look what you did.
Yeah.
And they're all seeing their reflection. And you know what? They had better stare at that reflection. Because I'm not going to stop speaking on what I speak.
No.
I'm not going to do it. There's only one way you're going to stop me, and that's to put me 6 feet under the ground. You have no legal authority to stop me.
Our country's too important. Our fundamental and unalienable rights are too important. This is a direct assault on the national character, spirit, heritage, and above all, identity of the American people. And, we're sick and tired of seeing our fellow Americans come under attack. We're sick and tired of seeing our way of life coming under attack. We're sick and tired of all of the balkanization that has been trumped up by this little potentate who wants to change America from a representative republic to some stupid, twisted little banana republic. If he wanted to do that, he should have gone to Kenya. He would have been welcome there. Yeah.
Fundamentally even. I mean, and again, I mentioned this before when he made mention of the statement, we live in the greatest country on the face of the planet. Won't you help me and join me in changing it? If we live in the greatest country on the planet, why would you want to change it?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. But no, he's kind of like a plumber whose pants are like 40 sizes too big coming over to work on your damn heater for your house. That's what's going on here.
And boy,
and you know what?
Isn't this a great way to woo your woman? Hey, hey, baby, you look so good. I want to fundamentally transform you. Wait, what? What?
Yeah.
You'd get slapped at minimum.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Even if you said that, if you were a single individual. Mm-hmm. And we're out at a fine after hours establishment, and even said that to a woman that as a pickup line, the cops would be overheated with anger because they would not know how to write up the report because they know it would be we could do it as sexual assault. But
war against women. That's what we'll do.
Yeah,
war against women.
War against women. Break out traffic SWAT.
Oh, gosh.
Randy, are we absolutely certain that he said fundamentally change and not Farouk mentally change America?
Oh, I don't think he knew of Farouk yet. He hadn't gone to Farouk U.
He might have.
I don't think he had been to Farouk U yet. That's a special school. Farouk U, it's very difficult to get into. You have to malick a lot of people to get in.
Sure.
But see, we joke about this a little bit because if we didn't, we'd be driven insane by the sheer stupidity of what we see on the part of the government. The real threat is the people like the Farouk Saids. I mean, the Saeed Farouks, or the Farouk U, and Malik, Tashfeen Malik. They were Islamo-fascists. And by the way, what of any of these proposed executive orders would have stopped them from getting a gun?
None of them.
Not
George.
a one.
None
of them. But we got to protect the children.
And just like Randy said, we make jokes about this. Again, not because we find it a laughing matter, because it's not. Okay? If we didn't make these jokes that we do in passing, well, we would be forced to say what we really want to say, which would make our entire naval fleet blush.
Yeah.
Okay.
It absolutely would. And it's despicable what we see with the way that the media has been handling stuff, with the way that this regime has been handling stuff, because they want to sit there and lie about it. And what I love about what they try and say with the media, it's these Black Lives Matters punks, again, are out there saying, well, look, the media is giving them preferential treatment. I've been reading the stories about the militia. None of that has been preferential treatment. They've been treating them like a bunch of yokels, like they're a bunch of idiots, like they have no idea what they're doing, and like they're just a threat. And then you have that dubious little sheriff there saying that the only thing they're wanting to do is spread violence. No, that is not their message. Why is the sheriff not defending his constituents, since he is the only constitutionally endowed form of law enforcement?
He's letting his voters down, is what's happening.
He's derelict in his duty.
To say the least. Now, guess what? Why don't we make a suggestion to all of his constituents? Don't reelect him.
Yeah.
Exercise your constitutional rights to vote. Vote based on the principles of the Constitution of securing and defending and maintaining your constitutional rights. Do not reelect him.
Yeah, because he's not doing you any favors. He's not representing you. He's not protecting you. In fact, he's capitulating and collaborating with this iron-fisted, tyrannical federal government that when you actually look at a map of the western United States, it is shocking and staggering just how much of the landmass that the federal government controls out there. In fact, you have governors in numerous western states trying to demand that they get that land back because it was illicitly taken from them.
Well, of course, then we have individuals like Harry Reid that step in and,
sell it to the Chinese.
Sell to the Chinese.
Yeah.
Well, I'm selling it to the Chinese because back in the 1800s, with the railroad and everything, we had
why privilege? Why privilege?
Well, why privilege? The Chinamen were slaves on the railroad, so we just want to give them their 40 acres. Shut up, Harry. Just shut up. I don't want to hear it.
Go slip and fall in your bathroom again, Harry.
Yeah, Harry.
Hey, I heard this little dimwit isn't seeking re-election, but
that's probably the smartest thing he's ever said.
Yeah. The smartest thing that his driver ever did a couple years back was have that horrible accident. The dumbest thing his driver did was have that horrible accident and not have any consequences for the passenger.
Yeah.
Harry Reid, I was hoping that accident would knock some sense into you, but I see clearly nothing will knock sense into you. You have to have brains to have sense to begin with. But this is what we see from the left. Whether it's somebody like that Sicilian freak from Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the one that's tried to get all of this legislation through. I wonder if Obama's going to have a sit-down meeting with him. And maybe together they could find where Obama's record went and where all that money Sicilian stole from Providence, Rhode Island went. Maybe that's what we need background checks on. Maybe we need to get down to the real nitty-gritty about what these little criminals, thugs, and potentates have been doing instead of harassing decent, law-abiding citizens with these impermissible ex post facto laws and bills of attainder.
Yeah. Well, with individuals like Siciliani or
Sissy Leany,
whatever. Rice-A-Roni. I'm sure he'd enjoy being a San Francisco treat.
Knowing his sexual proclivities, I'm certain.
Yeah. Just don't tell Uncle Ben.
I think Uncle Ben is Uncle Obama.
Yeah. Well, you took the time, Randy, to dig into this guy's past
Yeah.
and bring to light all of these discrepancies. But yet, how much jail time has he done?
None. Now,
Why
his
was he
brother's
not
in jail,
disbarred?
but not
His
him.
brother's in jail, but, well, this is what it is. See, folks, his brother took the fall for him.
Yep.
I will bet money on that his brother took the fall for him.
Absolutely he did.
Now, why was he never stripped of his bar card? Why was he never disbarred? Why was he never brought up on misprision of felony charges when he knew?
Because Jeremy, he was given an award for ethics from some group I've never even heard of, Common Cause. Wait, that sounds kind of communist. Common Cause.
Common Cause. The bastard redheaded stepchild that was adopted of Common Core. That's how it factors in. Well, the paperwork wasn't done right because nothing added up right because we didn't have Common Core at the time.
Yeah, so that 1 + 1 could be 333. I mean, this is what they do, folks. They are trying to dumb us all down so that we won't question the almighty government. You know, it's funny. If you go back to the original Wizard of Oz novels, you know what the allegory was? Dorothy was plain Jane America, confused and led astray by manipulative little wicked witches of the West, and then you had
North.
Yeah, well, the East was the good witch, because everybody well, that's if you go off of the new Disney theories, but I don't, because Disney is full of communists. But the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, you know who that was? That was the Republican Party. It's pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We're doing all this great stuff, but no, we're not really. And the Cowardly Lion was William Jennings Bryan. And what this was, in the original novel, her slippers were silver. The road was gold. So you had bimetallism leading to the Emerald City. This fiat currency. This fake, meaningless currency that was made to look big and great by the Republican Party of that time, and then a little bit by the Democrats of the later era, until they finally took us off gold, making the Emerald City the only thing that was there, and you had these people pulling the levers behind the scenes. That's what we've got with these politicians today. You've got a Sicilian. It's pay no attention to my corruption in the past. Pay no attention to what it is I do that's irrelevant. Except, what's he doing? He's pouring poison into the shared water supply of the whole community.
And, see, here's the thing, Randy. I've been angry about things before. And I have vented that anger in many different ways, depending on the circumstance. I'm at a level of anger that I don't know how to truly convey it or to make it go away, other than opening my mouth and making a stand.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have this mic here.
And to me, I don't know what angers me more. The country where I grew up in, which was already headed down this direction, and now I'm seeing it for my children and grandchildren, and potentially my great-grandchildren, having to succumb to these things in a much worse fashion than what you and I are involving in today.
Mm-hmm.
Or the complacency of the people not willing to take the time to understand, or those that do understand not willing to do anything, to choose to remain silent.
Or, like the media, to understand what it is, but to willfully be a part of the destruction of the country. Those are the ones I hate the most. And it's not a hate. It's a strong dislike to the point of where I wish they would go out of existence. I would want to see that with people like Megyn Kelly, all right? When she sits there and just tries to target people for this radical agenda and then tries to come out in an article, she's going to be on the cover of Vanity Fair now, and they're going to sit there, oh yeah, and she's sitting there saying she was very, very sick the night of the first debate when she tried to hammer Donald Trump with that question, that loaded, why do you hate women question.
Yeah.
Why
you talk down to women, even though I sat there and I posed, scantily clad.
Yeah, well, she was sitting there trying to say that she was sick and had to hide a barf bucket, and that maybe that's why she didn't do well. No, she didn't do well because she was targeting him. And she said that part of the reason that she was still there, despite being sick, was she knew no one else would ask Donald Trump that tough question. Now, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump, but I don't like anybody getting sandbagged by that kind of political correct nonsense. That's the type of cancerous doctrine that political correctness is. And then she can run to a magazine and they have this little tea moment where they have their little tea party with their stuffed monkeys and giraffes and their voodoo dolls. Yeah, their little voodoo dolls where they're going to sit there and stab it in the eye of men because men are awful. Well, that's what they try and convey anyway, and it's disingenuous. And she will not connect the dots, so she will put in, these white ranchers. When you sit there and say who the militia is that's standing up for their rights, what the hell does their race have to do with it?
Well, let's look at again. Let's take this opportunity to fight fire with fire. Okay, when the media, no matter who it is in the media, says, well, these white ranchers. You know what? If I was a black individual, I would be highly pissed off at them for saying that. You know why? Because, well, wait a minute, only ranchers can be white? Because it's not a common practice of ranchers to be of African-American descent or black descent?
Well, when the Black Panthers were marching in San Antonio, what was it, sometime last year? See, this was another thing that was kind of just buried. Mm-hmm. They didn't mention, they said Black Panthers, and then they just said the protesters after that. Mm-hmm. The protesters. No mention of race, no mention of singling them out, no mention of the type of firearms they carried, other than you could tell what they were in the photographs. Mm-hmm. AK-47s, a couple of AR-15s, and
more than likely procured illegally.
Oh, sure. I would certainly guess that the Pirelli shotgun that they had was.
Mm-hmm. And, again, you and I are both of the mindset that we don't care who the individual is. If you're going to sit here and you're going to spew propaganda and make things one-sided, whether it's for the left or for the right, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because that only shows that you have an agenda and you're willing to skirt or hide the truth, or, barf bucket, whatever you want to call it. So, for Megyn Kelly, I think we should put her on our no-fly list, Randy.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should. And her little barf bucket, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we can get let's wait for her to be on the cover of Vaginal Freak magazine, and I
think she's already on the cover.
Well,
I'll take that picture and use it.
We'll take that picture and use it, because listen, folks, this is how it works with us, and this is how it should work with every sovereign citizen and individual. The truth has no agenda. We don't placate to either side. We don't capitulate to either side. We don't hold any allegiance to any political party. Our allegiance is to God, country, the Constitution, and our families. In that order. Political parties have nothing to do with it. We want our country to be operated in the sense that it was designed to be operated in. Period.
And that means recognizing that each and every American citizen is endowed by his or her creator with fundamental and unalienable rights, which includes the fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. And that's why we are so sick and tired of potentates like Obama trying to strip those rights from us, because it goes against everything that is good and decent about the United States of America. And it also shows that he is just completely and diametrically opposed to everything that we stand for and represent as a people and a nation.
And what makes matters worse is he understands the Constitution. People say, well, he doesn't know the Constitution. No, he understands it perfectly clear.
Mm-hmm.
He understands it perfectly clear and perfectly clear. He gets it. This is why he is doing what he is doing. In order for him to undo the Constitution, you have to know what it is that you're undoing. He's taken the time to study it. He knows he doesn't have the authority for these illegal executive actions.
Yeah, why else send out all these armies of lawyers to go in and see if it is legal? I can tell you right now it's not legal. It's very easy.
Smoke and mirrors. That's
just
all it is.
Just look at the Second Amendment. Look at the Second Amendment. Is that language unclear? No. That language is very clear. Shall not infringe. Gee, that's tough, isn't it?
Well,
I guess that means that it's limited. Yeah.
Yeah, any fifth grader that can read surely understands that. Quick, someone find me a fifth grader.
Yeah, or certainly find Obama one.
Sure.
Gosh.
And this whole thing of him going to the lawyers to, well, I need to validate and verify that. No, you don't. Because it is very simple to understand. It's one of the most simplistic parts of the Constitution to understand. Any complexity that
infringe.
Any complexity that is attached to it or labeled onto the Second Amendment is only created through the sheer and utter ignorance and retardation. And yes, I use the word retardation because I'm not politically correct. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, it's some psychobabble made up terminology that makes unicorns' tummies feel all warm and fuzzy. No, I'm going to use the word retardation because in the true sense of the word, it means
it's holding them
back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We need to stop being politically correct. I've stopped. I will not be politically correct. Ever.
Yeah. And we can't be, because it's killing us as a nation. It's killing our identity. It's being wielded as a weapon against the American people.
Well, in the state of New York, Randy, to say that, to not properly label political correctness what it is, or to use certain terminology other than what's already labeled, that's fine now. This whole transgender thing, you know what? Those individuals, well, you can't call, mischaracterizing their gender. No. They're sycophantic, narcissistic piles of excrement that want to do nothing but garner attention from the public. Why? Because they are attention whores. That's it.
I'll call them what they are. They're human fecal matter.
Yes.
Human excrement. Maybe that would fit in line with New York's things, because it's certainly the truth.
And again, the truth has no agenda.
Yeah.
And that makes it so poignant with that whole phrase. The truth shall set you free.
Well, yeah, it absolutely shall. And with that said, folks, it is time for us to go ahead and begin our descent. I'm going to send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. As always, ladies and gentlemen, this is your Captain Randy Wright, and I'm joined by my First Officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to wish you a very happy New Year, and hope that this New Year brings you continued blessings as we face these challenges together. We also invite you to leave any questions, comments, concerns, or cheers.
Or if you just want to, completely enrage a leftist, human excrement in New York City, go ahead and invite them
Throw a
over
brick at them.
Throw a brick at them, or you can, throw an iPad or a tablet at them,
Sure.
as long as you pull this, this episode or any other episode up and hit play before you do it.
Yeah. That way they'll maybe learn through osmosis. Anyway, we
share.
invite you to join us the next time that we take to the friendly airwaves, leaving you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment like we always do here at the Wright Flyer. See you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.